How's everybody doing this evening? Good. Well, today is a busy day at Wayne Christian School. Our conference tournament started today, and we have 3 teams playing at home. Our middle school boys, our varsity girls, and our varsity boys. And I coach the varsity boys. And that game is scheduled to tip off at 7 o'clock. So you don't have to worry about me being long-winded this evening. Mr. Miranda and Mrs. Ford are here along with Mrs. Burt. If we don't have time at the end for you to come ask me questions individually, feel free to talk to them. They could probably answer more questions than I could actually. But if there's some things that you really want to talk to me about and I just have to run, feel free to call the school office and Kova will just talk with Kova and she'll get a time that we can get together. So before we get going, Mr. Gentry, would you open us up in prayer? Thank you, Mark. For those of you who don't know, Mark's dad was the engineer who built the elementary school years ago. And actually, they stopped by this morning. I got to talk to him for a few minutes. Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm Paul Brenner. And my family and I moved here 18 months ago. It seems like just yesterday. Things have flown by for us. My son is a senior. He's going to graduate in May. Lord willing, that he survives that long in our household. He has a bad case of senioritis, but we're confident that he'll make it there by the Lord's grace and mercy. But I want to just share a quick personal story about what Wayne Christian means to me. And it really has to do with my son. We moved to North Carolina from Middle Tennessee from a school that we'd been at for 17 years. My son was actually born in Columbia, Tennessee, a week after we moved there. Don't ask my wife about that story about moving when she was 10 months pregnant. That doesn't make me look real great, but that's the only place that Zach knew. My daughter actually started kindergarten at that school and graduated from there. 13 years at the same school. And when God picked us up and moved us to North Carolina, I should have known that he was going to take care of us. But I'm a lot like the Israelites are in the Old Testament, and I doubted, and I fretted, and I worried. Kim and I were very concerned about taking Zach away from the only environment he'd ever known. I coached football and coached basketball there, was an administrator at the school. It didn't matter. If I was at practice, he was there with me. If my wife was coaching volleyball, he was somewhere running around, or in the summer during weight training. He was somewhere on campus, so it was the place. I mean, it was really his home. And so to move 10 hours away to a place we'd never been before worried us. I never should have worried. You know, before we moved here in June of 2018, I was kind of going back and forth. I'd come for 3 or 4 days during the week, then I'd go back to Tennessee to try to get the house ready to sell and kind of finish up my job there, and I'd come back the next week for 3 or 4 days. I brought Kim and Zach with me one time, and before we even got to town, one of his current classmates called and said, "Hey, I hear you coming to town. Can I come pick Zach up and we can go swimming?" We hadn't even moved here, and the students at our school were embracing him. They didn't even know him. Now, I know I had a little bit of advantage because I was coming into a school where all the teachers were going to work for me. But nobody had to tell Dalton to call Zach. Matter of fact, he wasn't the only one. A couple other students had called him. And so they got together over the course of 2 or 3 days. He was welcomed in with open arms. I got to experience what we say is the most, is one of our strengths at our school, and that's that we're a family. And I know I've only been in the family for 18 months, but I feel like I've been here my whole life because of the way you all have taken care of me and my family. So I want to thank you. And I'll just report, I know I was kind of joking that hopefully he'll graduate. He better graduate. But it's been the best experience for him. It wasn't just an okay move for him. It was a phenomenal experience for him to participate in sports and in theater and in the AP classes. He's going to have a chance to go to the school that he wants to go to. It's Dordt University in Sioux Center, Iowa. If anybody knows where that is, you know your geography of the United States. But so I just wanted to share that personal thing with you. And where I'm coming from, we love this place because this place loved us. And so tonight, I'm just going to go through really quick a few things. Well, am I? I want to talk about things around campus. We're going to talk about some things that we've been doing in the classroom, then we're going to look forward. So we're going to kind of hit some highlights as we go through this past year, but it's always a good reminder of what our mission statement is. And so I know it's up there for you all to read. Can we go back one? Because it's important, and Mark actually prayed it, what we're about. Now, our mission at Wayne Christian School is to partner with families and churches to teach from a biblical worldview so that we can impact the kingdom. You need to know that biblical worldview, Christ-centeredness, is never going away. Every decision we make goes back to that. And as part of that, as an educational institution, we also want to make sure that we're striving for excellence in the classroom and in all the other co-curricular activities that we have. And then at the same time, we want to be building, making sure that we are sustainable for another 35 years and beyond. So, biblical worldview, excellence in the classroom, and establishing or building a good foundation, not just facilities, but curriculum, moving forward so that we're financially that we're in good footing. So let's go on to the next slide. This year, we experienced a 10% growth. We finished in K through 12 last year. We had 375 students in K through 12. This year, we have 415. And in the child care facility, infants through K4, we had a 10% increase there. We actually, this school year, opened up with over 100 students on campus that had never set foot on campus before. One of the biggest increase, if not the biggest increase in school history. So there were some growing pains with that, but there's a lot of kids, which is great because we want to impact the kingdom. And the more students that we can have learning God's truth, learning from a biblical worldview, a greater impact for the kingdom can be had. So we actually expanded to 3 sections of K4 and 3 sections of K5. So this next year, we'll expand into first grade. And there's a couple classes in elementary that are close to, we almost need to expand for them, so we actually may go to a waiting list. And then over half of our upper school classes have over 35 students. So we're getting close. Basically, kind of that number we look at is about somewhere between 40 and 45. We looked at we may have to open up another section. So we're bursting at the seams. The extended care building, We actually have 5 high school classes in the extended care building every day, and we have elementary art in there every day now. So we split up our library and moved elementary library to the elementary building so we could add another classroom in the high school building. That's full. Next year, we're probably going to have to remove the computers out of the computer lab, use that as a regular classroom, and for all of our computer applications classes, we'll have to use the Chromebooks. So we're searching for places, and we're going to have to do some maintenance on some buildings. So this summer when you drive by and you see us putting a new roof on the extended care building, we're doing that so that those rooms can last for a good time moving forward. So there's a lot of things that are happening there. Also wanted to talk about development. As you've probably heard me talk about and heard some others talk about our annual fund. This year, our annual fund goal is $250,000, which is a really hefty goal considering the most we've ever raised in a year is about $160,000. But this is part of us building that foundation for the future. We know that in a couple years we're going to need to start a capital campaign for a whole new middle school and high school building. In order to have a successful capital campaign, we need to have a successful annual fund. And you might ask yourself, why do we need an annual fund? We pay tuition every year. Well, the tuition and fees barely covers the costs of our operating budget. And we're committed to having fees and tuition pay the monthly bills. We do not want to depend on fundraising for those day-to-day operation things, like keeping the lights on, salaries, all of those types of things. So what the annual fund does, it pays for, helps us get all of those enhancements to the curriculum and to our activities. So an example of that, in the past year, over $100,000 in upgrades to our infrastructure for Wi-Fi, including fiber optics into the buildings. 250 Chromebooks on campus now. High school is a one-to-one. Every high school student has a Chromebook. We have 3 or 4 carts scattered throughout middle school and elementary for those teachers to use to integrate into the classroom. Our teachers have also received 30 new laptops for our faculty in kindergarten through 12th grade. So those are some technology upgrades that our annual fund is helping to pay for. It's also helping establish the foundation, and some of this cash that we're getting is helping the STEM building that we'll be building here this next summer. You know, our goal is to pay for as much of that in cash as possible, and so the more we raise with our annual fund, the less we will have to finance for that building. Trying to think if there's some other things there. Let's go on to the next slide. Around campus with all of the new students on campus, over 100 new ones. Like I said, over 90% of our students participate in the program after school. This year we introduced a brand new program for elementary students, 4-H Club, meets weekly. Football has returned. We had a record number of boys playing football this past fall. I think we had close to 50 between middle school and high school, and homeschoolers playing with us. And I do want to make note too of our swim team. We have more swimmers than we've ever had. I think we have 30-some swimmers, and they just had the how many? 35 swimmers. So, and actually they just took second in the conference meet, and I think we have 15 swimmers that qualified for state, which is a week from today. I think 15 is more than we had swimmers on the team all of last year. So that's pretty good. So they're having a great year there. So there's some exciting things happening. And what I want to make sure is that we don't look at you see the word co-curricular up there. We don't call these extracurricular. These are co-curricular. These are in conjunction with what we do in the classroom. I believe that athletics, other music, theater, fine arts, FFA, all those which we don't have yet, but all of those contribute or enhance the educational experience of our students. And I think they go like this. It's why I'm not a huge proponent of AAU basketball or club volleyball. They're there. I was a college coach, so they're kind of the bane of my existence for a while. But I believe you lose something when it's just a standalone sport. If you take that sport or that activity and you couple it and you put it together in that educational environment, it makes the whole experience that much better. So we always want to talk about those as co-curriculars. Let's move on to our credentials and accreditation. Just so you know, we're accredited by the ACSI and Advanced Ed. For those of you who don't know, ACSI is the Association of Christian Schools International. And Advanced Ed, some of you may know it as SACS, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. They accredit every public and private school in the South. And so we actually are dual accredited through both of those. And I will say the ACSI accreditation is much more rigorous than the Advanced Ed one. But when we go through the accreditation, the team that comes in actually fulfills the requirements for both of those. And we're actually up for re-accreditation next school year. So next spring, a team will be on campus to evaluate what we've done. And the big push with that is it's continuous school improvement. And it's not just you do it one time and you're good forever. It's every 5 years that we have to go through the re-accreditation process. Just kind of some highlights. I don't know, I didn't really know this until Mrs. Stevens told me this last spring, but 44% of our faculty have advanced degrees. And they're from places like Campbell University, Liberty University, ECU, a number of different colleges. So we have a very qualified faculty. And actually, why that's important is what we're looking at for dual enrollment and things like that moving forward with our curriculum. So as I mentioned before, with all the Chromebooks on campus, we have teachers are experimenting with Google Classroom, especially in the high school levels and some of the middle school. This is kind of a year for our teachers to get used to those things and really start to develop processes and things. So that will continue to grow as we move on next year. So let's move on into the classroom. And I want to talk about a few things. As most of you know, this past year we aligned all of our curriculum from 3-year-olds through 12th grade with one book publisher. And that was really to make sure we close any gaps in the scope and sequence. So there's all sorts of benefits from this. Some of the reasons we went to it, they have incredible resources for our teachers. Also incredible resources for you. There's after-school help. So if your son or daughter has moved beyond your capabilities to help them in math, you can just get on the website and click on the video for the lesson. You can learn it, and there's some practice problems there. There's also summer enrichment programs for, I think, grades kindergarten through 6th grade. So this summer, later on this spring, you'll get an opportunity. Hey, I'd like to grab that book for my son or daughter. They're moving into 3rd grade. It takes what they've learned in 2nd grade, it re-emphasizes or reinforces those things and gets them ready for 3rd grade and just keeps them fresh throughout the year. Of course, it goes back to our #1 priority. Bob Jones has made a concerted effort in the last couple years as they rewrite their textbooks to do a better job of biblical integration and teaching a biblical worldview. We don't want our students to just know facts. We want them to learn to think critically. We want them to interact with text and with information. We want them to think biblically, to think not just analytically, but to think biblically about what's happening in their culture and what's happening in the field of discipline that they're studying. I believe that when we go into the court of law and we swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I think if you don't teach the whole truth, you're not teaching the truth. And that's what differentiates us from other schools in the county, is that we're going to teach from a biblical worldview. All truth is God's truth, and we want them to understand that. But not just to know it, but to be able to interact and think about it. And how can I defend my faith? How can I have a great conversation with somebody who may have a different opinion than me? How can I share with them biblically where I'm coming from? So there's that. Dual enrollment opportunities. Many of you probably know about the CCP and CTE programs in the state of North Carolina. Basically, what the state says, if you qualify as a fresh or junior or senior, that they will pay the tuition to take a class at a community college. And so we actually expanded that this year. It used to just be CCP, which is the traditional college prep courses that we would allow students to take. Well, we opened it up to the technical education side as well. The state has always provided that opportunity. We opened it up this past year. So you can take, as a junior or senior, you can take classes like automotive mechanics, or we have a couple kids actually taking some welding classes. So there's all sorts of different, it opens up a lot more for our students to choose from for electives. And they get high school credit as an elective, and then they also get college credit. Another exciting thing that we're going to be doing this next year is we'll be expanding those dual enrollment options. As I said, our mission is to teach from a biblical worldview. You're not going to get a biblical worldview at Wayne Community College. I think you can get a good education there, but you're not going to be taught from a biblical worldview. So we're partnering with a couple different Christian universities to be able to take some online courses through their university, courses that are taught from a biblical worldview. And as part of your tuition at Wayne Christian School, you can get dual enrollment credit there, high school credit and college credit. We're actually, Ms. Ford and I, Ms. Ford is in charge of our curriculum and advisement. We're actually traveling up to the college at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in a couple weeks to talk more in depth about them, but it's a possibility that we may actually teach college courses on our campus. Going back to the slide, about 44% of our teachers have advanced degrees. If we have faculty on staff that are qualified to teach a course at their college or at their university, we could actually teach, like our seniors take British Lit. Mrs. Stevens has a master's in English. So she has at least 18, I think she has 36 hours in English at the graduate level. She's qualified to teach English at the college. So we would get with Southeastern, share our syllabus with them, make sure that it meets all the requirements for their accreditation, and it does. We teach British Lit like we always would, and they get dual credit at Southeastern for college. So it's actually one of our courses taught by one of our teachers. And they could get high school credit because you have to get 4 years of English, but they could also get college credit for that course. So those are some details that we're working out, just some examples of what we can do. And then the other thing that we're trying to do is expand the amount of electives that we have. I met with all of our high school all of our high school classes this past spring and then right before Christmas this year. And I just asked them a bunch of questions about the classes they're taking, about the school in general. And one of the things that came out is that we want some real world classes. And so we're looking into some things that we can offer. We're not going to be able to do everything that they wanted, but it's a step. We want to take some steps this year to provide some classes that would be very beneficial in the real world. One of the things that they said the most beneficial class they've ever taken at the school is our financial planning course. We used to give it to juniors and sometimes seniors. We took that course and we moved it down, and sophomores take that class now. So it's things like budgeting, and they start to see that whatever you put on the credit card costs a lot more after a while. Some of those, how many of you had to learn that the hard way, right? So we thought, 10th graders, they're starting to think about getting a job, start to thinking about getting a car, and so they know that, hey, it's not just the car, it's the gas and the oil change and the insurance and all of those things. So they start to think about what it really costs to live. And so those are the kind of courses that they'd like to see. So we're looking into some things. Some possibilities might be a typing course. If they didn't learn how to type when they were taking computer applications in middle school, maybe we offer a semester or a quarter-long typing course. Nowadays, if you can't type, you're behind the 8 ball. The other thing is some students we have that transfer in, they don't have the experience like we try to provide in middle school with computer applications. Maybe we provide a high school computer applications class where they learn the intricacies of Google Docs and spreadsheets and Publisher and all those kind of things. Just looking at life skills classes in that regard. My computer keeps going to sleep on me. In order for all of this to happen, we're going to have to look at how we do school. Right now at the high school level we have 7 periods a day. And it's hard to get everything in. And with our plans to build a new STEM building in the next year, what's the best way to do chemistry or to do biology? And so we've actually met with our science faculty, and we're beginning to talk about what's the best way to do chemistry. Is it to have chemistry every day for 50 minutes a day? Or do we need to have one day of the week where it's 90 minutes so we can actually do a lab? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't just walk in and do a lab. You got to set it all up, you got to do the lab, and then you got to clean it all up. And that's kind of hard to do in 50 minutes. And so we're looking at different models for scheduling. We're looking at some rotating schedules. We're looking at university models and really making it probably a little less every day we have to do all these things, but give more time to the students to interact with texts that they're reading and papers that they're writing. So there's some things that we're really exploring to try to make these things happen. I probably better pick it up or I'm going to be late for the basketball game, huh? And one last thing real quick, curriculum mapping, we're starting that. One of the things we want to provide our teachers with is as many resources that will make them great in the classroom. And we're just now starting to map all of our curriculum to national standards so that we make sure that we're hitting all the things that we need to throughout the course of their study. So as we move forward, packets are available tonight. Miss Bird will be out in the lobby if you haven't already received them. And if you have specific re-enrollment questions, Mr. Miranda, Mrs. Ford, and Mrs. Burt can probably answer those a lot better than me. We've really tried to streamline the process, so you fill out one sheet for all of your kids. You don't have to fill out multiple sheets for each kid. And even if you have a student in the school now and you have one that's going to come in for the first time, use that same sheet and we'll be in contact with you about getting all of the other paperwork, and if there's an interview or anything needed like that, we can work on those. Like I said before, we really try to make sure that we can fund our operations through tuition and fees. And so this coming year, in order to do that, we'll be raising tuition about $30 a month. That's $300 for the year. And I shared this actually with all of the high school students that I met with. You know, the last 3 years we've operated in the red. We've operated in the deficit. Now, thankfully, we had money in the bank, so it wasn't real dangerous. But to go down the road of operating in the red for several years in a row is not good for any organization. And so we're on track this year to meet budget. But to meet budget next year, we have to make this increase. And I'll just let you know the majority of that increase is really just like last year. The majority of that increase is going to our teachers through salaries and benefits and things for them. So the board is truly committed to increasing the benefits package and the salaries of our faculty and staff. One thing that we're adding this year, after listening to some of your comments and questions, we're extended care, both morning care and afternoon care. We're actually increasing the amount of time that's available for it. In the mornings, extended care will begin at 6:30 a.m. So right now it starts at 7, but starting next year we'll go to 6:30 because there are some families that have to be to work by 7. And so we thought that would help them out. And that'll be at no additional charge to what we're charging for extended care. And then another option, we know that we have 4 half days scheduled for next year. The end of each quarter is a half day for teachers to work on grades. and to do some in-service. So half days and teacher in-service days, there's an option that if you need childcare during those days, that an option for $120, I think is what it is, for, I think there's 4 or 5 in-service days and 4 half days. You can get childcare for those days, because we know it's hard to find somebody for a half day to watch your kids. So that's there. Also, the re-enrollment packets are due by March 2nd. After March 2nd, it's a $100 additional fee for that, and that's, for us, it really helps us to know early as we plan and order books and things, that we know that as soon as possible. E-textbooks will be available again this spring, and more information will be coming out about that. One thing that that I want you to know is that we don't have any intentions of getting rid of hardbound books. Research shows that having those books is very beneficial. But we also know that for some students, those e-textbooks really have some tools that are helpful. We also know that for some students, it's good to have that e-textbook, because I always forget to take my book home. So the e-textbooks are an option for you. We can order those in conjunction with the hardbound books by a certain date. So again, there's a deadline to get a certain price for those two, but that'll be coming later this spring. And then also, one change for the school calendar next year is that we're going to start school a week later. So August 17th will be the start date for school. So looking at a lot of those things, some feedback that we got, providing a little bit more time in the summer. So basically, what was our first week of school this year is going to be our teacher in-service week, and we'll start on August 17th. What's next, Melissa? All right, looking ahead. So a lot of questions about the building and that, so I just want to kind of go through the timeline. This past month, and actually started in December, crews were out surveying the property to update the existing site plan, and we can keep going on there to the next one. So now we're in the phase where we're working closely with the builder and the architect on specific plans for a building. And this is the architect's first drawing of what we think is to come. So if you can kind of see in the background those buildings that are just white, those are our existing buildings. You can see the gym there along with the elementary building. And so right here in the forefront is our fine arts building. It has an auditorium, a new cafeteria, common space, rooms for art and music and band and media center. And then you can kind of see kind of moving down from there towards the child care building. That's what the vision is for the new middle school and high school building. 24 classrooms. You can kind of see the kind of the square thing in the middle. That's a common area where there'll be some offices, and until we get to the new cafeteria, probably space for our kids to eat that's a little bit more comfortable than eating in Cafe A and Cafe B. So that's kind of the long-range vision of where we want to go with this. And so that brings us on May 2020, the day after Memorial Day is what we're shooting for. Graduation is Friday, then there's Memorial Day, and on Tuesday, we want to break ground on the new STEM building. And the STEM building is going to kind of look like that. That's that picture right there actually shows 1 science lab and 2 classrooms. What we're going to build is actually 2 science labs. So if you take that bottom half and just flip it up to the top side there, there'll be 2 classrooms. That building is about 3,100 square feet. It also has bathrooms. The bathrooms are a little oversized for that big of a building, but we're building so that we can add on. This is not going to be the end. This is just the first step. So as we go from there, this time next year, we're actually having classes in that STEM building. So what the builder says is it take about 6 or 7 months to build, and that's with a little bit leeway in there. So next January, we want to be in that STEM building. So, and then in the fall of 21, our plan is to kick off a capital campaign so that we can build the entire middle school and high school, which will look like this. Now you notice that little red square there, or the little dotted line? That's the STEM building. That's what we're going to build this summer. But you'll probably notice that's like a module. Not a modular, but a module. And what we want to do is take that, and we can repeat that several times to make the rest of the building. Now that doesn't mean that every classroom will be a science lab, but every room has the possibility. As we build that out, we can say, you know what, we need 5 science labs. So we can very easily make 5 science labs. What I also like about it is we can have labs throughout the building. You don't have to go down to the science area. So we can have it intermingled. And the other thing it does from a monetary standpoint is that it's one building that we're building several times together. So as we get bids from contractors, they have a really good idea of what it's going to cost to build that building. And so we can save money that way too. So then it takes us, go ahead and go to the next one, builds us out into there. That's the long-range plan. So stage 1 of building is the STEM building. And stage 2 is the middle school and high school building. And stage 3 then becomes the auditorium added on to that. So, and in addition to that, there'll probably be some small renovations to some two existing buildings, like with the cafeteria and with the gymnasium and those types of things. So, I've talked for quite a while. I have to run here in a minute or two, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask Mr. Miranda or Mrs. Ford. And if it's something that you really want to speak to me about, please give Kova a call tomorrow and she can set something up with that. So with that, I thank you for being here. I hope you all have a great night. If you want to come cheer the Eagles, we've already had 2 games going. The 3rd game's going to start here in about 25 minutes. So thank you all. You are dismissed unless you want to, if you have questions, Mr. Miranda and Mrs. Ford will kind of be around, so you can just approach them and ask them questions.